Welcome back. It's the Marketer of the Day podcast. It's Kylie Kullack here from Struck.com. That's STRUCK.com. Kylie is the head of client engagement at Struck. She's a dynamic leader in brand transformation, and she has experience and has had adventures in destination marketing, outdoor recreation, biotechnology. She empowers her teams to achieve exceptional results. So we are going to find out what we don't know, but haven't implemented about branding and getting it all dialed in. And so, Kylie, glad to be speaking with you.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And so I introduced you a little bit, hyped you up a little bit, but I know I didn't fully do it 100% justice. So what are you all about? What is your focus? What just gets you so excited every single day?
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I appreciate about what it is I get to do as my occupation and profession is that I get to work with companies and organizations who are usually in this inflection transformation state. They either are new to market or they are established and to pivot or kind of hit a new growth trajectory. And we are really instrumental in helping define and refine who they are as an organization brand and envision what they are going to be in the future 10 years from now and create those brands and brand experiences that help bring them to life. As you mentioned, we do have kind of some verticals that we specialize within in terms of outdoor rec, technology, as well as something that might be of interest to your listeners is, of course, branded and environmental design. We found it really critical with all of our engagements, whether you are a shoe company, a biotechnology company, or a large entertainment company, the brand that you create and that you are putting out to the world is super critical. And that is not just your logo and or a campaign or your website. It is the branded experience that you want your consumers and or employees to be living and breathing every day. And what does that look like, right? And so it could be either manifested within a retail experience, or it could be manifested most recently in an example for an entertainment company. They were struggling with recruitment, right? So the Nickelodeons, the Pixars of the world are fighting for the best talent and the most innovative talent. And I think a big key that a lot of us have been talking about is going back to the workplace and fostering that collaboration and that creativity. And that means being back in the workspace, if you will. And how do you not only make it enticing, but really reflective of the brand and kind of help grow that brand love even more for those branded environment spaces. We just did an engagement with Nickelodeon Animation Studios, and they can directly account for, from ground level up, 9-story building, full branded experience. I can send you the link to some of that work. They have directly accounted essentially a 33% reduction in their recruitment costs because of the environment that their employees are able to experience, live and breathe, and foster further creativity and innovation.
Well, it sounds like a lot of work, and it sounds like one of those things where maybe you don't really appreciate it when it's all set up, but then if you want to be that Nickelodeon or that Pixar, it's like, okay, well, I want that. Like, how do I get there? And so you mentioned about this. There's this keyword you said about about to go on a growth trajectory. So am I kind of on the right track in asking you about okay, you kind of you build a company, build an organization, get people, get customers, all that stuff. And then you go through these pivots, right? And it's like, if you don't adjust, then you amplify the bad, amplify the mistakes. And so is it on the right track to say maybe there's some cleanup required in order to really get the rocket ship to take off?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There should be regular audits that organizations are doing across their brand platform, as well as all of their key channels, right? I mean, things happen, life happens, things get posted on websites, just because they think it's important to post, right? And things can happen in the day-to-day, and then it's really important keeping your kind of end user and customer at the focus of what it is we're communicating as a brand. It's important, and we recommend to our clients, at least on an annual basis, kind of doing a full audit of all of your owned and kind of respective channels and what is on there, and then reevaluating, knowing your positioning, knowing your brand plan 2 to 3 year out, ideally. What is it that we need to start working on now so that we can have those elements in place in the future? So as you are growing, you're consistently evolving and representing your brand in the best light possible as your future state.
It sounds like it's kind of a degree of maturity, like you're mentioning about planning things 2 or 3 years ahead of time. When I was younger, I hated that idea. I was like, I don't even know where I'll be when I'm 22. But then when you get older, you're like, hey, if you're really working on a important project, right? If you're like launching a book or doing some kind of a campaign, like do all these things ahead of time and just have this little bit of organization, right? Have a plan, have a timeline, have your goals, figure out your resources, your people, and all that stuff. And so a lot of it makes a lot of sense. And so I'm curious about the before and after. Like when you say, maybe the before is like someone like Nickelodeon is like really fighting for talent and like concerned about the future. And then you jump in and you say, hey, like do all these things. And I don't even know where to begin or what that means, right? I picture like the walls are painted a certain way, or you make sure like there's not the toxic kind of behavior in the workplace. But what is the before and after like? But like before the branding is figured out, and after you and your company work your magic.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I mentioned, there's a pretty intensive audit and kind of evaluation of where you currently are. And it's also identifying based on the core audiences that you're looking to influence, whether that is an internal audience, such as employees or, potential employees or potential customers, or those who will want to engage with you, or investors or of the like. What is it that they're looking for, and what is it that they are wanting to help spur in action? Understanding what their motivations are, their needs are, and you start to build kind of what you your plan, if you will, of this is the vision's end state, right? And so we all have those, right? In 5 years, this is where I want to be, and then start to work from there. And then tactically, how do we start to build out those plans in an annual, sometimes basis of, we know we want to get to this landmark. Here are the 5 kind of mile markers, if you will, that we envision being the key components that are going to help you achieve those. Whether it's, let's first prioritize websites, since that's your primary interface with either customers or employees. Whether it is your physical space, because that's where you're going to be generating the most buzz as a retail location. So thinking through the kind of primary touch points for each of our clients, and then building plans that can be actionable. We all know websites don't happen in a day. Campaigns don't happen in a day. You need to be planning, a year and a half. And plus, quite frankly, organizations need to be planning from a budgeting perspective too. It's not as if someone just says, oh, we need a new website. Oh, we've got to let's make it happen. Right? Like, you need to be planning 2 to 3 years so that you're ensuring that funds are there and your executive team and or kind of key stakeholders and decision makers are on board with those investments over the next period of time to help you achieve those goals. And how are you going to be measuring them to prove value, and how they are generating the return that you're looking to help motivate and perhaps even accelerate the future kind of roadmap.
So it seems like, kind of listening to your thought process, I'm getting that it's really important to ask lots of questions, to ask questions about
Yes.
about from your client, and kind of ask lots of them to the point where like the plan starts to form, take shape, and then even kind of I'm hearing from you lots of like asking yourself questions like, hey, are we on track? What's the priority? What should we do now? And I find that like really helpful, right? Because sometimes you say, oh my gosh, I need to like make this brand plan, this like 3 year plan. Where do I start? You have the blank page, you have weird templates, maybe you copy other people. But then if you kind of ask the questions over and over, it seems like that's a really helpful way to like kind of like work the writing process and figure out the strategy and kind of get the right sizeness, right? Because you want to fit everything in, but you don't want to be too long. So it just seems like even just kind of your wordage, like questions are really helpful to get things done. Hey, doggy.
Yes. She will. Yes, at the core of it, that is absolutely true. We are an incredible creative organization, and we create incredible experiences, but all of that is deeply rooted in strategy and kind of research along the way. We don't want to be making anything on behalf of our clients that we just put it out in the world and hope it works well, right? Like we want to make sure things are getting tested and validated through concept ideation, through development, all the way through pre kind of launching into the world. So that is a big piece of how we operate, is making sure that we are building the appropriate and kind of iterative validation testing process throughout, so that our clients also have the comfort of knowing that this is being validated against our core audiences and we're taking feedback and insights accordingly. We worked on a campaign recently for the state of Utah. This is a government organization, right? Federal funds. We need to make sure, state funds, we need to make sure that those dollars are being invested responsibly. And so before, a campaign is launched, we made it a practice to ensure that, at a certain point throughout the creative process, we were doing iterative testing, taking that feedback, making tweaks to, let's say, the video commercial before putting millions of dollars behind it to put it out into the marketplace, right? Like you have to have a certain degree of confidence that something like that at that scale is going to perform to the level that we are all hoping, before investing so critically in something. Nobody wants that on their face at the end of the day.
So you're saying be scientific, because if you're just guessing, if you're relying on luck, it seems to me like, okay, you have kind of two outcomes, right? You have bad luck, and then you're like, oh, I guess that didn't work. Try something else. That's frustrating. Or you have good luck, and you don't even know why it worked, and it's hard to repeat it. So I like your kind of your thought process here, right? You say, well, here's the plan. Here's what we'll do. Do we think this work? Educate a guess. Try it on a small scale. Iterate, tweak it, see what works, enlarge the scale. It reduces a lot of the risk. But I imagine that some people might say, well, it's a lot of extra work. But then maybe you would say, well, it's work up front, but it kind of it better ensures the result that you want. And so it's always fun to hear about case studies, right? About the actual adventures you've been in, like state of Utah, Nickelodeon, etc. But because it's the internet, and because it's like people in general, people love drama, right? We love when things don't go according to plan, and we panic and we stress out and we have to like reconfigure and fix it. So do you have a fun story like that for us in your back pocket? Can you share one of these kind of journeys you've been on, where you're doing a campaign or a client or something, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like this blew up in our face, I don't know what to do, and you had to like readjust? Anything like that come to mind?
Sure. I can, thankfully, knock on wood, at this point, can't say anything's blown up on my face at this
Okay.
point, but definitely the war wounds as it related to COVID, and as it related to travel and tourism. We were heavily involved in marketing the state of Utah and ensuring that we were bringing folks to the state to recreate appropriately. And that shifted our whole marketing plan, and advertising campaign plan considerably. Typically, one would go through the planning process, create it, and then put it into market. And of course, with learnings and performance metrics, kind of make appropriate tweaks as necessary. But this was a wholesale. We were having weekly, if not daily at some points, conversations looking at visitor sentiment, looking at case counts of COVID, where people were traveling from, and adjusting our messaging and creative accordingly on the fly. Right? So it was important to ensure that for those folks from states who were traveling, who felt comfortable traveling, that we were welcoming them with the appropriate message, and maybe turning down some of the activation within certain markets that were not feeling comfortable about traveling and did not want to kind of rub folks the wrong way, inviting them to travel if they weren't feeling comfortable. So that was definitely a good 9 month, I'd say, in the trenches of just how many messages are we putting out there? How are we remaining consistent from a brand perspective and a brand voice perspective? How are we being respectful, and inviting in the right ways, with all these variables that were happening and new to all of us? Right?
Right. It sounds very cutting edge. Like you think about all these things that are now possible because we have the cloud and all these databases and visualization. It's a miracle that all these Amazon packages get to where they need to go. It's a miracle that all these like flights get there, and it's kind of fun to think about, right? There's the map, and what am I going to do, and what kind of different like messaging. And so and it's great that you and your company have this dialed in, but in your industry in general, right? You have competitors, there's other companies that do what you do. Are there any like practices that just drive you crazy? Are there others that don't do what you do as well as you do, and it just drives you nuts. You're like, why are they missing the boat on these things that you do well? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think the biggest one as a generalization is when it is very apparent that the core customer audience that they're trying to attract has not been really considered. I think we all know folks, unfortunately, who fancy themselves as creative directors, or their son provides feedback, let's say, on creative executions. And just because they like it or they don't like it, that's what gets put into the market, right? So I think one of the key things that we always counsel with our clients, if you're going to be working with us, we're going to make sure that we keep the customer at front and focus. And yes, your opinion is very important, but you are not your core customer, and we need to make sure that we are evaluating everything and developing everything with them at the forefront, and ensuring that we're really delivering on that message versus just putting something out there that is fun, is cool, and maybe kind of is a badge of honor, let's say, for some CMO or CEO of the organization to say that, hey, we got our first commercial out there, right? I will say, just one thing to backtrack a little bit on. Yes, we are very right brain. We're very data focused. We're very metric specific, and want to make sure that we're validating work along the way. But we are coming up on celebrating 30 years, and access to these types of tools and kind of research is really relatively within the last 10 years, really day-to-day implementation. And I don't think enough can be said for the value of really smart creativity. Right? So we really are that mix of right left brain, of really coming up with those core insights from our strategic team or strategy team. What are the core insights, and kind of giving those to the creative team, and they come up with these incredible ideas, right? Yes, we validate and we test further down the way, but you can't do everything from an analytical perspective. You need that creative insight and that creative spark and that expertise to really come to the table with creative ways to execute on an idea, and kind of spur an action that we're all looking for.
Yeah, and it's like you combine the ingredients, you get the spark, and you create something magical to mix a lot of different metaphors. Like there's this word creativity, and when I was younger, I used to think that meant kind of like brainstorming, doodling, thinking about stuff. But then I was like, hey, this word creativity, that it has the word create in it, and when you create something, when you bake a cake, you add the eggs and the flour, you combine things that already exist in simple forms, and you create something that's more advanced. And so when we're talking about creativity, talking about, well, you use the data as one part, you use kind of the strategy, you have like your work ethic, your way of getting things done, you have like the people, you have the collaboration, you have the fundamentals, you say like kind of going back to the basics and making it about the customer, not about you. And so it's one of these situations where even though I'm not in your space, I still get a lot of lessons from just finding out about your mindset and your thought process, and like combining all these different kind of angles, so that way you're not just very kind of one dimensional. You're saying, hey, we've got this hard problem to solve. We want to get Nickelodeon's branding figured out. Let's hit it from all these angles, get different people involved, and solve some stuff. But speaking to the people that are for you, that's why we're here, right? What you're all about. You come to a podcast, you demonstrate some knowledge, but then you say, well, maybe some people will get some lessons and then move on. But there's some people that you're like, hey, those are my people. That's my future prospects, customers. So who are those people? Who do we want to impress today by having you on this podcast? What's the sort of company size? What do they do? Where would they be stuck?
I'd say those who have big vision, and those who are in kind of those inflection points. That's where we really have kind of secret sauce style, if you will, of understanding who you are as an organization and your brand and who are your customers, and what are your kind of marketing tactics. But then how do we level that up, right, to help you get to that next jump, if you will, or that next growth phase? I mean, that's where I think where we've been so successful within the biotech space. Particularly, we've worked with organizations coming out of stealth mode all the way up to IPO, right? And that's where some people scratch their head and they're like, "Oh, biotech is an interesting one." And I was like, "That's the one where having a strong brand and core messages and be very direct and insightful is so important, because you need to get your investors on board quick, and they need to understand very quickly what it is that your value proposition is and how you're going to achieve it." And so I would just say, we have, yes, verticals that we kind of specialize in, but really our secret sauce is really in those inflection points, those transformation stages. If you're looking to kind of have some significant growth, that's really where we thrive.
All right. So the requirements here are big vision, and
Mhm.
you're at the transformation stage, about to go through some significant growth. And if someone says, all right, that's me, or that company could be me, I'm curious, I want to take some next steps, start those lines of communication, where should someone go to have a sort of chat with you and figure out some next steps?
Yeah, I'd welcome anyone to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Kylie.Kullack, or you can always go to our website, struck.com. We've got a form there where you can submit kind of some information that comes straight to me.
All right, so let's spell some things out, since it's a podcast both literally and figuratively, right?
Literally,
Struck
yes.
is struck.com, and that's Kylie Kullack, KYLIE dot KULLACK on LinkedIn. Talk to Kylie, have that conversation, find out about what Struck has done for others and what they can do for you, so that way you can kind of get on the right path, right? And ensure success, and not be leaving things up to chance. Actually, work with people who know this branding stuff, and know how to get everything lined up, and know how to create this multi-year plan to get to where you want to go. Kylie Kullack from struck.com. And before I let you go, Kylie, it's sort of
Yeah.
surprise stump you, put you on the spot time. It's the end of the show, where I like to ask my guests about a fun or a helpful quote or lesson that has served them in life, that they can pass along to us. So, what comes to mind for you as far as a quote or lesson?
I would say that one that keeps me kind of grounded and is a constant reminder, particularly within my role as I kind of faced with our clients and ensure a successful client relationship and deliverables, is that you can learn what people will forget perhaps what you said, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And just making sure that they feel respected as a partner, collaborator. It's not just work; it's people business too.
Eleanor Roosevelt said that, I think, right? Just
I
it's
think
not just
so.
about the facts and data, but the emotions. People will remember how you made them feel. So be kind to people, listen, work with them, understand their needs. It's just good advice to be a good human in general, but also in working with people, making money, growing companies. So if you loved Kylie's message today, if you want to take some next steps, if you think that she and Struck can help you, that's struck.com and Kylie Kullack on LinkedIn. Very nice speaking with you today, Kylie.
Hey, Robert, this has been so fun. Thank you.